Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am going to be doing this tutorial on, Module 5, Lesson, why did I write 5? Module 3, that one's not very good. There we go. Okay. Module 3, Lesson 5, Independent Practice. Make sure you put your name at the top. And let's get started with number 1. 4x minus 8 is less than 12. Now we are getting into two-step equations. Well, two-step inequalities. These are solved just like two-step equations, where you get rid of the constant. So this is the constant. You get rid of that so that the x and its coefficient are by themselves, and then you divide by the coefficient. Those are always the steps for two-step equations. With two-step inequalities, it's exactly the same thing, except at the end, if the coefficient has a negative, you divide by a negative and flip the sign. Okay? And I can actually give you another demonstration of using the algebra tiles. This time we're just going to be doing it, I should probably make this a lot bigger. We're going to be doing it as an inequality. So let me just separate this I'll just use this bar to separate the two sides of my equation. So on this side, I'm going to have 4 x's and negative 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4 x's, and then 8 negatives. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. And then I'll have 12 positives over here. Remember, these are 5 of these little guys just all stuck together, so it's easier for me to count them out. So 5, 10, 11, 12. And remember that this side is less than 12. So we're going to use all of our same rules to get the x's on this side by themselves. So we are going to add in the opposite. So we're going to add in positive 8. So I'm going to do that like this. I'm going to line up those 5 and then 3. So I can just put a positive 5 and positive 3. And I'll do the same thing over here. Plus 5 and 3. So plus 8, right? 5, 6, 7, 8. Plus 8. And now this is a 0 pair. So I can just slide these off, right? 5 positives and 5 negatives cancel out to make 0. These all cancel out to make 0, and I'll just slide them right off my board. Okay? Next, I am, going to add this so you can see what I did. 4x is less than 20, and I just am taking a pause here to make sure it's recording. Yep, okay. And now I'm going to divide by the coefficient. The reason we divide by the coefficient is because this is saying we have 4 x's, and we want to know what 1 equals. So I'm going to divide by 4, which is basically like splitting it up into 4 groups. And then I'm going to split these into 4 groups. So 1, 2, 3, and there's enough that every group gets 5. So luckily I didn't have to break these up and make little ones out of them because that would have been a bit tedious. But every x is equal to 5. Okay, so when I divide by 4, I'm going to get rid of that. Then I have 1x is less than 5. Notice I did not divide by a negative, so x is just less than 5. And let's go ahead and draw that. So let's do negative 5, 0, positive 5. And it does not include 5, so it is an open circle, and I'm going to shade below. Okay, it is all the numbers less than 5. Okay, Number 2, x divided by 2 plus 7 is greater than negative 9. I'm going to follow the same steps here, but I'm not going to show you with tiles because it's a little difficult to show you half of an x tile or x divided by 2. So I'm just going to follow the same logic, the same math logic as up here. So I first get rid of the constant. This one's positive, so I use the opposite operation, which is minus. And so those cancel out as a zero pair. Negative 9 and negative 7 make negative 16. I did not multiply by a negative or divide by a negative. I just subtracted. So this sign stays the same direction. And then x over 2. Well, if x is being divided by 2, the opposite operation is multiply by 2. So then these cancel out, and x is greater than, and the 2, I'm looking at the 2. What did I multiply to both sides? A positive. Okay, so even though here I'm multiplying negative 16 times 2, the sign stays the same because this 2 is positive. So this would be negative 32. I was about to write 34. 32. Okay, and let's go ahead and graph that. So negative 32, I'm just going to make this really simple. And I don't need to fill in all the in-between numbers. I'm just going to say it's right here. Negative 32, x is greater than, so it's going to go this direction. Okay. You know what, I do want to show you another way to do this in case you have to do it on the computer. You can also put your open circle up here and then shade along here above it while your number line is below. Okay, that's okay too. Okay, number 3. Notice how I'm making this very easy to see what numbers are where. Okay, you need to make sure that if you're doing your work on a piece of paper, that it can be graded easily. Okay, 3x minus 7 is less than or equal to 14. And we're going to use the same logic. Plus 7 on both sides here. That makes a 0 pair to cancel out. 14 positives plus another 7 positives is 21 positives. And then just bring down, I still have 3x on this side. And no multiplying or dividing by negatives, so the sign stays the same. Then I need to divide by the coefficient. Divide by 3 to both sides. X, and this is positive 3, so the sign stays the same. X is less than or equal to 7. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So negative 7. So like I showed you here, if I was doing this on the computer, it's kind of hard to draw over the top of a number line sometimes. So instead, you can do it right above the number line and then shade a line above it. Or, use your dashes to make your line. And it is or equal to. This line underneath means that it could be equal to, so we're going to fill in the dot. Okay, it's a closed circle because it includes 7, whereas this it's not equal, it's only greater than, so it's an open circle. Okay, let's go to number 4. And this says negative 5x plus 12 is greater than or equal to negative 23. So same steps. This is why it's called a two-step equation. We first get rid of the constant, and then we divide by the coefficient. So we're going to subtract 12 on both sides, 0 pairs there, and negative 23 and another negative 12 is negative 35, okay? And then I did not multiply or divide by a negative, so the sign stays the same. And I bring down what's left over here, negative 5x. Now I'm going to divide by a negative. I have to divide by this negative 5. So divide by negative 5, and x, this flips because I'm dividing by negative, is less than or equal to negative 35 divided by negative 5. Well, 5 times 7 is 35, and two negatives cancel out, so it's positive. So x is less than or equal to 7. So 0, 7, negative 7, less than or equal to, so it's going to be shaded in, a closed circle, and then going in the negative direction. It's less than. Okay. And I am going to put 5 on the front here because these don't take up that much room. Number 5, negative 7 plus 4x is greater than negative 31. Now, just because they switch the order on us doesn't mean that it changes the steps. I'm still going to be getting rid of the constant and then dividing by the coefficient. So I use opposite operation. I'm going to add 7. This is negative, so I need to put positives so that it can cancel out for a 0 pair. Whatever I do to that side, I do to this side. So negative 31 and positive 7 is negative 24. And I did not multiply or divide by negative, so the sign stays the same. And then I'm left with 4 x's on this side still. Now I'm going to have to divide up those x's. Remember, I'm picturing in my head that I have 4 x's on this side of the equation, and then on this side, I've got all these negatives, okay? So I'm going to be dividing it into 4 separate groups. So divide by 4. Okay, so those cancel, and I just have 1x, which is going to be greater than, and negative 24 divided by 4. Well, 4 times 6 is 24, so that's 6, and then put the negative on there. The 4 is what I divided by. It is positive, so this sign stays the same direction. And we can graph that, 0, negative 6. And it's going in this direction because x is greater than negative 6. And does it include negative 6? No, there's no or equals to, so it's an open circle. Okay, number 6. 2x plus negative 14 is greater than negative 8. Okay? So don't be confused that it's plus minus. This is saying we've got 2 x's, right? And then we've got 14 negatives. So I could put all these negatives in. 5, 10, 15, oh, that's too many. So I need 14, right? So I have 2 x's and this plus here means basically and 14 negatives. And then on this side of the equation I have 8 negatives. Okay? So I'm going to put in positives in order to make this cancel out. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So now those are 0 pairs and they're canceling out. So 2x is greater than 14 positives and 8 negatives. Okay, that'll be 6 positives. And then I have 2 x's, so I've got to divide by 2, and x is greater than 3. I did not divide by a negative, the sign stays the same. And let's draw that real quick. 0, negative 3, 3, and it does not include the 3. So it's an open circle going bigger. X is greater than, so it's going bigger than 3. Okay, let's do number 7. Okay. X over negative 6 plus 20 is less than 2. So I'm going to get rid of the constant. So minus 20, that cancels out for that side. And what I'm left with on this side is x divided by negative 6, and then 2 and negative 20. So positive 2 and negative 20, well, 2 of those will cancel out, leaving me with negative 18, or 18 negatives, if we're picturing it as these little tiles. Okay, well, I don't want to know what just a portion of x is. I need to know what a whole x is. So if x is being divided by negative 6, I have to now multiply by negative 6 to get rid of it. And I'm going to multiply by the negatives. Multiply by negative 6. So these negative 6's will cancel out, and I'm left with just x on this side. And, oh, did you see what I did? I'm multiplying by a negative, so I need to swap that. I need to flip it. So x is now going to be greater than whatever this is. So let's do a quick little multiplication here. 6 times 8 is 48. 6 times 1 is 6. Plus 4 is 10. So this is 108. Negative times negative cancels out to be positive. X is greater than positive 108. Okay, I want to show you, I want to take you back to this step right here and show you what happens sometimes with students. So they'll have x divided by negative 6 is less than negative 18, and they'll recognize, okay, I multiply by 6 on each side, and they'll wind up with negative x is less than, and then we already did 18 times 6 is 108, and that would be negative. And so they'll wind up with something like this. Negative x is less than negative 108. Well, we don't want to know what negative x is. So you're going to have to get rid of the negative on both sides. We do that by dividing by negative 1. Divide by negative 1, because it's basically like saying negative 1x. Okay? So now, if I have negative 1x divided by negative 1, that gets rid of that negative, and I just have x. And then negative divided by negative is positive 108. And now that I divided by a negative, I'll flip-flop that. Okay? So if you get to the end and you have a negative x, it's okay. You just either divide or multiply both sides by the negative, and it gets rid of it until you have your positive x. Notice that my answers are the same. Okay, and both of these x is greater than 108. So it's okay if you get to a point where you have negative x equals something, or negative x is less than or greater than, whatever it is. It's okay. At that point, you just know that you're going to have to get rid of that negative, not by simply erasing it, but by dividing by negative 1 to both sides. Okay? And let's draw this. 0, 108, and x is greater than that. Does not include it. There's no or equal, so it's open, and we'll shade positive. Okay, number 8, negative x over 5 minus 14 is less than or equal to negative 29. All right, let's use opposite operation to get rid of the constant. We'll add 14 to both sides. That cancels out. I'm left with negative x over 5 here is less than or equal to negative 29, positive 14. So 4 out of the 9 is going to cancel out with this positive, and we'll be left with 5 here, and then 2 minus 1 is 1, and the bigger number is negative. So negative x over 15 is less than or equal to negative 15. I said that wrong. Negative x over 5 is less than or equal to negative 15. Okay. Here is a really good example of where a student might not multiply by that negative. Okay, and end up with a situation where you have the negative x. I know I see it ahead of time, so I'm going to make sure I multiply by negative 5 to both sides in order to get rid of this negative. So x, I'm multiplying by a negative, so flip the sign. Negative 15 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 1 is 5. 6, 7. So 75, negative times negative cancels out to be positive. X is now greater than, we flipped it, or equal to 75, and it's positive. So 0, 25, 50, 75. X is greater than or equal to, shaded in. Number 9, 14 minus x over 2 is less than or equal to 6. Okay, here's our constant over here. This 14 is positive, so we'll put minus 14, cancels out, and I have, don't forget this negative here. Don't let that drop off. This is minus or negative x over 2. And then 6 positives, 14 negatives. I'm left with 8 negatives. And now, same situation right here. I need this negative 2, right? Just like this negative 5. So we're going to multiply by negative 2, multiply by negative 2. Since I'm multiplying both sides by this negative, my sign is going to flip. I'm left with just x. Negative 8 times negative 2 is positive 16. And I'm going to draw my little graph right here so I can have room for number 10 right here. 0, 16, negative 16. And unless the problem tells you exactly how to do your number line, it doesn't really matter. That's why I've done it a little bit differently each time. So greater than or equal to. So it includes the 16. So am I going to do an open circle or a closed circle? It'll be closed or shaded in. It includes the 16. Number 10, negative 4 minus 7 is less than negative 27. Oh, negative 4x minus 7 is less than negative 27. Let's make that a little neater. Okay. Let's get rid of this constant by using the opposite operation. So those cancel. I'm left with negative 4x on this side, negative 27 and positive 7. Well, the 7's cancel out, leaving me with 20, and it's negative. Divide by negative 4. Yes, I just divided both sides by a negative, so I'm going to flip the sign. X is what's left. Negative 20 divided by negative 4. 4 times 5 is 20. And then the negatives cancel, so it's positive. X is greater than 5. And does it include 5? No. So it'll be an open circle. And I shade positive, or I shade bigger than, right? X is bigger than it. All right, that's it. We did it.